Hi everyone. So in today's video lecture we're going to talk about print function arguments. Okay, and this topic was also requested by one of the subscribers, and so basically what this topic is all about, it's about arguments used in print function. So far we have talked about only 2 or 3 arguments, right? We have explored other arguments as well, but we didn't associate them with print function. So in this video I'm actually going to show you all the arguments of print function and how you can use them. Okay, so let's start with first I'll give you the list of arguments. So in Python, as you know, everything is an object, right? So print function takes first argument as object. Okay, and all the arguments that I'm going to talk about, so we have object. Now these other arguments, these are optional. Okay, so it's not like you have to have them. You can if you feel the need to, but you don't have to always. Okay, the benefit is that you can format, or you can, like, whenever you feel the need to use them, you can use them. So first argument is object. Okay, then we have SEP, I'm sure you've heard of it. Then we have END, right? Then another argument that we have is file, and we have flush. Okay, so these are 5 arguments in print function. Okay, now we are going to see one by one how they all work. Fine, so I'm going to start with object first, right? So I'm going to start with object, and then we'll move on to SEP. Then in another example, I'm gonna use END. Then we'll see file, and then we'll see flush. Okay, so let's start with object. All right, so we have print function. I think so. Let me change the font. Actually, one of the students or subscribers, I also received this request, like how to change the font. So see, you can go here, options, right? Then you have configure IDLE, and here you have all the fonts like font face, sample, and all of that. And here we have font tabs, right? Go here, and then you can change the size. So I can have like 20 something. Fine, and then you go to apply. Okay, this is how you change the font size. So object, what is an object? If I say print 2, so this is an object. Okay, so print 2, here 2 is an object. Fine, this is an object. Then you can have as many objects as you want. So for example, I can have, this is number, I can have 2 objects, as one is string and then another is another number. So number 2. Fine. Second argument that we have is, second argument is SEP, right? This is used to separate the objects. Okay, so how we're gonna do that? Print number 2, and if you have if you watched a previous video, you will already know that by default these are the values. If you check here, it is automatically showing these values. So SEP by default is, it is space, right? As you can see here, I haven't used SEP, so it is automatically space here. Okay, so by default it is space, and if I want to change it, I can change it to anything. So you have to use double quotes, and then maybe I want to have a dash, so it's going to be a dash. Okay, so it's instead of space we have dash here. Okay, and similarly you can use any other special character, or even a string or anything. This is going to be printed, this thing that you are using between two quotes is going to be printed between these two objects. Okay, and even if you have like more than two objects, it's going to be used in all the objects. I'm really sorry for the background noise. So for example, we have two here, and then let's say I want to insert another string, maybe that says this is example, this is an example or whatever. So this ends here, and so if I print this now, you're going to see that number was first object. So after first object we have separated by dash, then the second object is number 2, and then the third object is this is example. Now if you remember, if you notice here, when it says this is example, there are no dashes here. This is because this is one object. So separator basically separates the objects. Okay, so we have first object, second object, and this is third object, separated by whatever value you provide here. Okay, and then we have third, SEP is done. Then the third argument is END, and END by default is what? So print END by default is new line character. So if it means when the object is printed on the screen, the cursor automatically goes to the next line, right? That is the end of the print statement or print function. All right, so I'm going to use this statement. Okay, so first by default END is next line, so when you print here it automatically goes to next line. Now maybe we want that instead of going to the next line, it should print something here, it should do something, right? So what we're gonna do is we are going to use END equals, so suppose I want that it should end with a dot, so you will provide END value as dot here. So number, then this, and then we have dot. Okay, this is how END works. And instead of using, like, you can also use a special character here. So for example, /n is like new line character. So you can use special characters like that, and many other things, right? It's going to be printed here after the print statement, whatever you want to print using print statement. Now let's talk about file. Another argument we have is file. So file argument is used to write, as its name suggests, it is used to work with files. Okay, so file is used when you want to write into a file. Okay, when you want to write something, you want to put data into a file, and by default its value is, let's see what its value is by default. Okay, so by default its value is .std out, and you see flush is false. So by default, I'll make it a little easier for you. So by default, you can easily tell by default what the value is. If by default meaning that you're not including the argument explicitly, like you're not clearly writing it on the screen. So if you're not using file, so for example, in this statement, you haven't used file, right? Here you haven't used file, you haven't used file here. So by default, the value of file is console, right? What is console? Here, the screen where you are seeing the output. So by default, the output is written into or onto the screen. Okay, and again, with just like you worked with SEP and ENT, you can change the value of file as well. So let's see how you can change the value. And since we are going to work with files, I'm going to actually create a new file. Okay, and to actually understand these functions, to work well with these functions, these arguments, you should also have knowledge of how files work in Python. So I'm going to drop two links in the description, and I will also give them in the end of this video. I'm going to give two links to file description, files video, files in Python. I created these videos, I believe, 2 years ago. Yeah, I think so. Yes, I believe it was. Yeah. So I'm going to drop those links in the description, and I'm also going to give those links at the end of the video. Maybe I will give them in the description, something on the screen also. I button, you know, the round button. So you should go to those videos first and get an idea how we work with files. Then this is actually going to make a lot more sense. So let's start. So whenever you want to work with files, there are three main things that you should keep in mind. When you're working with a file, you should first open it, whether you want to read it, write into it, or you want to modify it. First thing is you need to open it. So open is the first thing you need to do. Then comes the operation part. Now operation can be a read function, a write function, or a modification function. You want to edit the contents. Okay. Then the last step is, the last one is close it. So open, perform the activity or the function or the operation, and then close it. Okay. So suppose I want to open a file. Now so we have open function. We use open function to open a file. And as we know that functions return something, right? So this open function actually returns a file object, and we call this object as file handler. Okay. And then this file handler is used to deal with a specific file. Okay. This file handler can be used instead of using the name of the file. Okay. So what we have is, we have this open function. This function returns a handler, or you can call it a file object. And then this handler is used to handle the file. Whenever you want to perform any operation on the file, you can use this handler. Okay. Now let's see how it actually works. So since function is open function is actually going to return an object, so we need something to catch that thing being returned. So I'm going to use F. You can use any character, you can use any alphabet. Okay. I'm going to use F. You can use file 1, file 2, A, B, C, D, whatever you want to use. So I'm going to use F equals to, maybe say I'm going to use Z. Okay. So this is the file handler, and then we're going to open a file. Now the file that I'm going to open, this file has not been created. So when I open this file, okay, when I use this function, the file will automatically be created when I give the name of the file. So suppose the name of the file is file first created. Okay. And then I'm gonna write. Now here you need to provide the mode of the file. So why do you want to open the file? Do you want to read it? Do you want to write? I've explained all the modes in those videos. So go there and check them. So in this case, I want to write into the file. So I'm going to use W. Okay. So this file will be open in write mode. Fine. So generally we use write function. So we use the handler and write function. But here, since we are dealing with print, so we are going to use print. Okay. And if you remember, how does it work? How does print function work? First, you have the object, right? This is the object. Fine. So first you have the object, and then these are optional, I told you. Now we are dealing with this file. So object and then file, and you have to write the name of the file where you want to write something. So name of the object in this case would be, what will be the name of the object? And yes, since you want to create a text file, because we are going to deal with the text only, you have to write txt here, .txt. Okay, file name .txt, opened in a writing mode, and then we're going to write. Yes, so here we are going to provide a string that we want to write into the file. So that is, string is also an object, right? So for example, in the here, since I wanted to print on the screen too, and I wanted to print on the screen number, so we provided these objects. Now here, it's not about screen, but we want something to be printed or written into this file. Okay, so we will provide that input here. What do we want to write into the file? So let's say I want to write, this is my first file. Okay, and then object. So we have object is string, and then we're going to use file. Okay, so here we are going to use file equals to. Now here, instead of providing the name of the file, I told you open function returns file handler, file object. So we are going to use that handler here. Okay, instead of using whole name of the file, full name, you can use file handler. Okay, to perform any operation. And once you write into it, then you just need to close it using handler again. So for that we have close function. Okay, now I'm gonna run it. First you need to save it, my program. Okay, save it, and then I'm gonna run it. Fine. You will not see anything on the screen here. This is because we did not write or print the text on screen. We are writing it directly into the file. This is my first file has been written into this file. Okay, now we can check, of course we can check. So for that, again, since you have closed it, now you need to, again I told you three steps. Again, when you were to write into the file, we opened it, we've written into the file, and then we closed it. Now we want to read from the file, so we will again open it. Now for opening, you can use the same handler or you can use a different handler. Okay, I'm going to use let's say a different handler. So a equals to, now we're going to open the file. So name of the file, it is file first created.txt, and I want to open it to read it. So instead of writing W, I'm going to write R. R is for reading. So I'm going to open it in read mode. Okay, so we are opening it, and once it is opened, the file is opened, I want that its output should be printed on the screen. Okay, so I'm going to use print and f.read, read its output. So not f, a. We usually use f while creating other programs, so I'm used to that. So how it works is, again, we are using a.read. So open function will open this file, and then we are using the file handler, this one. Now once the file is opened, consider that this was opened in read mode, and then all the contents are caught in a, right? So a becomes the file handler. Okay, now I want to read the contents. So we are using read function, read method. Okay, and a will call it. So a is the file handler. So it means that we want to read the contents of a. What is a? This is file handler associated with this file. So we are trying to indirectly read the contents of this file. Okay, now once the contents are read, we want them to be printed on the screen, because if you only run a.read, it's going to just read. So we want that it should specifically be printed on the screen. So print a.read. Okay, now I'm again going to save it, and I'm going to run it. Okay, and you can see this is my first file. The contents of the file have been printed on the screen, right? Okay, so this is it, and the last one we have is flush, right? This is flush. And what is the use of flush now? So this is actually associated with buffers. Buffers are used in Python, so we are talking about buffers now. So what is a buffer? Buffer is like a temporary place, right? Buffer is like, for example, when you open YouTube, right? Or sometimes when you play a song, buffering starts. So it is sort of like, what does a buffer do when, so for example, when you have a file, like you're trying to write something, right? So you want to write it into the disk space. So for example, let's say this is your disk, and I'm sure you know that these operations are very slow. So when you're trying to write something into here, these operations are going to be very slow. Now it could be that data is quickly being sent to the disk, but it is not able to cope up with it. It's not able to maintain the same speed, right? So operation will automatically be slow. But why should we stop the file from sending the data to disk? Because ultimately these operations are slow. File can easily send the data. So what we do is we use a buffer. Okay, so file will keep on sending the data and buffer will keep on having it. So file keeps on sending it, and if disk is very slow, buffer will allow the disk take its time to process the data, to save it, and it's going to keep the data sent from the files temporarily in the space in buffer. So temporarily the data will be kept in the buffer. Okay, and once the operation is done, so data is written into the disk, buffer is automatically cleaned when we use close function. Okay, because in the end we use close function. So when the close method is used, buffer is automatically cleaned, right, or flushed. So flush function allows the programmer, allows you to flush the buffer before the close method is even executed. Okay, so it's like you don't have to wait for that. You can just immediately keep on flushing it. Fine. So how does that go? We have all of this, right? Instead of using f.close, a.close, I'm gonna use before a.close is executed, we're gonna use a.flush. So that is it. The data will be flushed. Okay, so you are able to see the this contents of the file also. This is because I executed the program from the very beginning, right? So you are able, it's like it is opening the file, contents are written. Contents are obviously automatically written. Once you create a file, even if I don't use it, even if suppose I am not using this one also, I'm opening this file, this has already been created when I used those previous statements. Okay, that's the use of file. It keeps data as in permanent form. Okay, again, go check those videos. You will understand the basic use of file. So this file has already been created. So even if I don't use those previous statements, it is still going to open it and read the data. And then before close function is even executed, we are executing flush method. So save it and I'm gonna run it. And yes, you see, even if I did not use those previous statements, but it still opened the file. It is printing the content of the file on the screen, and then we closed it and we flushed the buffers and then we closed it. So this is how these arguments work, and I hope these are clear. If not, feel free to drop a comment in the comment section. You can ask if you have any doubt. And I'm really sorry if you could hear anything in the background. So I'm really sorry for the background noise. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video lecture. Till then, take care and have a good day.